Welcome to the Feminine Truth Podcast with Mary Miranda, a place where you can reconnect with your wild, cyclical, and fierce truth. I am Mary Miranda, a mentor, coach, healer, and intuitive. I guide women on a journey of remembrance, reconnection, and embodiment of who they are, their essence, power, and truth by reawakening the power of their feminine energy, womb, and menstrual cycles. Join me each week to indulge in raw, unedited, and unfiltered topics to help women own and step into their divine feminine truth and become unshakable, unapologetic, and bold in who they truly are. Let's jump into today's conversation. Welcome to another episode of the Feminine Truth Podcast with your host, me, Mary Miranda. And I was literally just sitting down about to get my day started, and I just got this huge inner pull that I needed to come and speak on something that I have been struggling with for a very long time, and I kind of didn't know what exactly it was. I have been probably struggling with this my whole life, and I never knew. And you would think someone who's educated, who has a health sciences, biology background, who is into so much personal growth will know. But the truth is that sometimes we can have all this intellectual, logical, rational knowledge, but that doesn't mean that we know exactly what's going on in our bodies, because objectively we can't really see. We can't really be we know exactly what's going on because we're too much in our head. So this is something that happened to me, that for the longest time I have been living in my head. It was just pretty much from the neck up, and I detach, ignored, and suppress being in my body, feeling in my body. So, and this happens to a lot of us women who grew up as, in a way, as perfectionism being our armor, being our mask, because that's the way we would get love. If we got everything right, if we got the good grades, if we controlled, in a way, we became controlling because we needed to control our environment, our behavior, the way we thought, what words we said, our presence, everything. We used to have this huge control to help us be perfect so we can get love from a parent, both of our parents, or anyone who this would have contributed to us developing this mask, this armor. And this is something that I struggled with, and then I dealt with. And just knowing that some days I still find myself back in that space, but I have the awareness now, not only consciously and in my mind, my body also has awareness now that I can just right away notice, and I know what's going on, and I can shift. I can use the tools that I have in my box to help me move through that. So I'm gonna go more in depth with this because I actually would like to have like an interview with someone who's an expert in anxiety to come in. We can have this beautiful discussion around it, but I kind of wanted to share a little bit of my journey around it because I didn't know I had anxiety. I did not know this. I remember when I was 7 years old, 6, 7, honestly, it was like I was so young. I would be laying in bed about to go to bed, and I would just wake up in a panic just of the thought of my parents dying, something happening to my parents. And at the time, I was living in Mexico with my mom and my siblings, and my dad was always in the United States working, so he would only go seasonally to visit us each year because of his line of work. So I just remember waking up in a panic, just like a panic, and just like breathing hard and just being panicked and having so much anxiety, just thinking about my parents dying, me living without my parents, something happening to my parents. It was just the worst feeling ever, and I didn't know what it was, and I never told anyone because I didn't want anyone making fun of me. That was a huge wound that I had when I was growing up, being made fun of and humiliated. And I just didn't want my siblings making fun of me because they quite did that a lot. And I also didn't want anyone to just, I don't know. I think it was just more like protecting my feelings of someone telling me I was crazy, stop thinking about it. So I just kind of probably learned to suppress everything because I'm like, oh, I'm probably going to be told to just forget about it, to stop it, or to stop crying, or to stop doing something, So I kind of just learned to just be invisible in a way by not saying anything, not sharing anything, just keeping everything to myself, because I think there were some instances that something would happen and I would be a victim, quote unquote, but then my mom would yell at me as if it was my fault when it wasn't my fault. So I kind of learned to not share nothing just because I didn't want to be blamed. So, I grew up and anxiety was within me. I just didn't know. Fast forward, high school was really chaotic, really traumatic, bullying, all of that. I had anxiety going into school every day. I didn't know this. Okay, I honestly never saw any professional around this. I just kind of thought, oh, I'll deal with it. So high school was really, really a traumatic time. I didn't want to go to school. I didn't have friends. I would be eating in the bathroom. I would be sitting in my social worker's office outside eating, or just with an excuse to see him during my lunch hour because I didn't want to go into the lunchroom because I didn't have any friends. I didn't have anyone to sit with. And it was just like this miserable time that I would be constantly with this fear, anxiety. This is just like of women telling me, well, it was just not all women. It was just like a specific group of Latina women who were 2 years younger than me wanting to fight me and kick my ass, and quote unquote. And it would just be like this threat every single day that I was going to have someone waiting for me at the end of the school day, waiting to be beat up. And it was just a lot of fear. And I remember crying, telling my mom to get me out of school. I wanted to go to a boarding school because I felt I would be safer. I would be safer at all-girl boarding school. But it was really hard, right? Because financially in the United States, they're super expensive. And I came from all Catholic school, non-school in Mexico. It was a private school, so the culture was completely different, But fast forward more toward my 20s when I decided to go to out of state for college, just to get away, just to start all over. I was like, oh, if I start all over somewhere, I am going to make friends. Everything's going to change. I'm going to be so happy. But that's when things got turned the worst, I guess. Because I realized I also had depression. And I was medically diagnosed with a depression. And it was a really bad time because at the time my brother was in Iraq. He got deployed twice. He was injured once. And I do remember I transferred there my sophomore year. And it would be a lot of calls from my mom. And like the middle of the night, I would be trying to get some studying for an exam I would have the next day. She would be calling me crying that something happened in the area my brother was. They got ambushed and my brother was dead. And it was just like this. Iowa, the university, I went to University of Iowa, was 3.5 hours away from my hometown and Chicago area. And I remember rushing with this anxiety, this fear that I didn't know it was anxiety at the time. I just felt a lot of overwhelmed feelings. I just felt like unsteady. I just felt like I couldn't sit still. I just felt like I couldn't breathe. It was just a lot of that, but I didn't know what it was. I just thought it was stress. This whole freaking time, I thought it was stress. Believe me, I thought it was stress. And I just remember, thankfully my brother made it home safe. But we all know what happens to people that are in war. They suffer from PTSD. They suffer from anxieties, depression, like so many people, So he was never the same. But we're so glad he's home. He's the hero of our family. And I got into dating, not the best partners, not the best choices, but somehow I needed those relationships in my life. But the whole time I was with anxiety. I had so much anxiety. And, once I had my spiritual awakening and I started doing this work, I realized that I had an anxious attachment. Sometimes it's disorganized, so it kind of goes back and forth. But it used to be very anxious. And I didn't know this. I learned this like around 2016, 2017 when I started doing this work. And I always thought I was stressed. I was just stressed. Oh, it's just stress. It'll be over. I just have to manage it. I just have to control it. But the underlying thing was anxiety. And the underlying thing underneath that, obviously, is an overactive nervous system. It's a nervous system that is constantly in sympathetic. And I was always on fight or flight. I was always on this arousal. I was always trying to survive. I was always trying to just like feel safe, because I have never felt safe until the past few years that I have done this somatic work, that I have done the work in my body, that I have done the work from the neck down, that I have gotten out of my head into my body, that I have reconnected with my womb, that I have learned so many techniques, including breath work, EFT. Those two have been game changers in my journey with anxiety. And although I have not officially been diagnosed, when was it? I think it was like about 3 years ago that I was going through a really tough situation, and I went to the doctor and he prescribed me some antidepressants, anxiety pills that I did end up taking for a few months to help me. And they greatly helped me, but I knew deep down that that was not the way for me. I'm like, no, there's gotta be a better way. There's gotta be a better way. So I started doing more tools, more techniques to ground me, to get me more out of my head, because the overthinking and anxiety, it's just crazy, right? We all know this. People who have struggled with anxiety, it's honestly, it's so overwhelming that you get more overwhelmed by the overwhelm, and you get more anxious by the overthinking, and it's just like this loop that you seem to never be out of, right? So with the anxiety that a lot of us deal with, we don't even know where it's coming from, but everything comes from, I believe, everything somehow is rooted back to your childhood. And some of the stuff that you carry, it's from your lineage, is from your ancestral lineage. It's also from the womb. Whatever your mom was feeling, what's going through, you also have that in your nervous system. It's like coded in you. So a lot of times, like, many people are like, oh, I had a good childhood. Okay, yeah, but I had anxiety and I had a semi-okay childhood, So a lot of the stuff that I carried with me was also part of the womb, when my mom was pregnant with me, what she was going through. And before that is what she was going through when she was a child, when she was a teenage. So a lot of the things that I have are from my lineage too. So it was also diving into that work so I can shift and release the trauma, because for me, everything was stored in my womb. And most of it was stored in my womb, because I ended up having a lot of womb health issues. And there's this huge connection that I made that anyone, and this is just my opinion, obviously, and if you resonate with this, I invite you to sit with this information. If you're triggered, to just sit and ask yourself why you're being triggered, or why is this resonating with you in this way, or how does this feel with you, and kind of be your own advocate and kind of start exploring that path, right? But I highly believe that women who have any type of menstrual issue, womb health issue, or anything like that, have trauma stored in their wombs, emotions that they have suppressed. And this is like a feminine collective wounding that we have been silenced for so many years. A lot of us didn't have a voice. A lot of us were not able to be empowered, to be bold, to be unapologetic, to be ourselves, right? A lot of women have to contour, have to mold, have to wear a mask, have to be this way in order to get love, have to be modest, have to be good girls, have to be, like all these things that we have to be, suppress our womanhood, suppress our womb, suppress our connection with our bodies, our connection with our feminine energy. So a lot of that is in our sacral chakra. So a lot of that is in our womb. So therefore, all this trauma that we have, unprocessed pain, unprocessed trauma, unprocessed emotions, is stored in our wombs, and it gets manifested as health issues. It gets manifested as endometriosis. It gets manifested as fibroids. It gets manifested as cysts. It gets manifested as so many things. If we want to birth not only a baby, but if we desire to birth this version of ourselves, if we desire to birth this business, if we desire to birth this idea, but we can't and we suppress it, we have all this energy being suppressing our womb. So of course something is going to happen. That energy needs to be released one way or the other, and sadly a lot of times we end up with health issues. And the only reason why I speak about this so passionately and with all the knowing in my body, it's because I have dealt with fibroids, with menstrual pain, with ovarian cysts, with the endometriosis. I just had a surgery 3 years ago to remove a 9-centimeter fibroid from my womb. So yes, when I was doing this work, I realized it's because of so much suppression, not only as a feminine, as a woman, as a daughter, as a granddaughter, but also because of my own life experiences, my mom life experiences, even my dad's, even my family's, my grandma's, so it was just like this thing. So I had to deal with all of that, and I had to untangle it, and I had to dive deep into that work, and I had to do a lot of the deep inner healing for my womb. And magically, somehow, the periods improve. Endometriosis, like every month, it's almost pain-free. Some months, it depends on what I deal with, if it's more stress or not. It gets manifested 3 months down the line in my period, sometimes the next period. So I use my period, my menstrual cycle, as a predictor of my health, of my nervous system, of my anxiety, of my depression, of everything that I deal with. And when something, let's say I have a painful period out of nowhere, I'm like, okay, what happened the month before? 2 months ago, 3 months ago, what happened that could have caused this, right? So with the whole anxiety, is that my anxiety was linked to so much stuff. It was kind of like the tip of the iceberg was the anxiety, but underneath was all this stuff that I needed to pay attention to. I needed to dive deep into all of me. My past, my roots, my heritage, my ancestry, my mother wounds, my sister wounds, the wounding I had with my own feminine, my womb, my menstrual cycle, like everything. And it's just such a beautiful integrative work that I do for not only for myself, but I had to do it for myself in order to be able to guide women to do this work for themselves too. But if you are struggling with anxiety, there's gotta be a root cause for that, right? Anxiety just doesn't happen because it happens, right? And a lot of times people, well, not a lot of times, but even last year, 2020, COVID, a lot of people dealt with anxiety because everything was out of their control. Everything was unsafe. They lost control. It was the unknown. It was the uncertainty, the unpredictability. It was the changing plans. It was the stillness, being at home, stuck. Places were closed. Food was running out. Toilet paper, everything that happened, right? New situations that you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know when it's going to be over. And it was this whole huge, unpredictable, uncertain situation that happened to many of us. So many women ended up having a lot of painful periods, a lot of painful menstrual cycles, and a lot of issues, not only with their wombs, but like maybe other parts like body aches, like things like that. So a lot of it comes from this relationship we have disconnected from and dissociated with from our bodies, from our wombs, from our hearts, from who we are as feminine women. And I say feminine women more is speaking more of feminine energy, right? Because we can also be very masculine energy women, but when I say feminine women, it means more your relationship with your feminine energy. And we all have, men or women, we all have feminine energy and masculine energy. So even if you don't identify as a woman, you still have feminine energy. Even if you don't identify as a man, you still have feminine energy, okay? Masculine energy. So it's this relationship with your, I should just say feminine energy because I don't want to trigger anyone. But if I'm triggering you, take this as medicine. Take this as something to dive into, because triggers are medicine and messengers. So but yeah, so this is what I have gone through with anxiety. And today I was sitting down, literally, I was about to start my day, and I just got this huge nudge, this hearing, a pull, go and do a podcast on anxiety, go and do a podcast on anxiety. And I was like, no, I have to write notes. No, do it now, do it now. And right now, I use when I do my meditation and my Reiki healing every morning, I have this specific notebook it's like a journal, but for downloads, anything that gets downloaded, anything that gets channeled through. And I connect with plant spirits, herb spirits. So today I connected with chamomile, and I had this beautiful message. And chamomile is a very mothering energy type of plant, type of flower, type of herb. And anytime you need nurturing, anytime you need just self-compassion, kindness, to really have like this self-soothing, like a hug from your mom, go and drink chamomile, tap into the energy. So I downloaded this message from chamomile, from the spirit of chamomile, and I wanted to go and get the notebook. And right now, I went into this room to do my podcast because there is no echo or noise. And I remember I was like, oh, I should go and get that book I should go and get my journal so I can read the channeling. And it's like, no, sit down and do the podcast. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit down and free flow, and just whatever gets channeled through, it's going to be what it's meant to. But yeah, so today I was just sitting there and I'm like, oh, I need to go and do a podcast on anxiety. So here I am. And some of the things that anxiety thrives in is control. It's knowing, it's having certainty, it's knowing what's going to happen in the future. So being predictable, that's huge. And having reassurance. So when we don't have reassurance, that's when our anxiety kicks in, because it's like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. Something devastating can happen. We're not going to survive this. This is so painful. And also we want to know familiar, that we want to be with the familiar. And if we are in an environment or in a situation that's not familiar, it triggers your fight or flight, your survival mechanism within your nervous system, within your body. And this is when you don't feel safe. This is when you feel you lost control, because it's the unknown, the unpredictability, the uncertainty. And a lot of times, people who are control freaks, that's the way we say it, or perfectionists, we need a routine. We need a lot of structure. We need all of that because it provides this safetiness where we thrive in, right? So a lot of times we have to let go of that. And when we are too much in our masculine energy or too much in our head as women, with the hustle, we want to do it all, we can do it all, we can be it all, we can make things happen, it's going to be up to me, we want to control, we want to fix, we want to, all the hustle and all of that. It's just like a recipe for disaster for your anxiety to come full force. So when you start doing this work and really trying to find out why you're anxious and all of that, a lot of times it's because we are so in our masculine energy, this warrior, protective, that we have detached from our bodies, we have detached from our wombs and our hearts and our souls. And that's a lot where our feminine energy lies. And our feminine energy is kind of like this floating in water type of essence, type of vibe, type of energy, where you can just lean back, you trust, you surrender, you let go of the control, because you trust, because you are so at peace and you trust and you just surrender and lean back. The unknown doesn't trigger you. Unpredictable situations don't trigger you. Not having control of everything doesn't trigger you. This is when you are allowed to kind of receive, to kind of just be in your body, in your essence, because you know that it's okay to have others help you. This is huge for women. And changing plans don't really get to you. You are in stillness and you feel safe. This is why a lot of times when people are highly anxious and have panic attacks, a lot of times meditation is not the way through, because stillness creates more anxiety. And where meditation kind of offers that peace of mind, that getting into your body, a lot of times this is just like, it's gonna do the opposite for people who have a lot of anxiety. So they have to go through this kind of if you're familiar with the polyvagal theory, you have to go through different exercises to climb the ladder to get to this state of safety, to get to this state where your nervous system is in parasympathetic mode, which is the feeling of tranquility, peace, and all of that. So you have to navigate your way through that. You cannot just be highly anxious, go meditate, and you're gonna be okay, right? It depends. Maybe that's gonna work for you, maybe it isn't. That's why you need to have a guide, a coach that kind of is knowledgeable about this stuff and how, and it helps so much when you are coaching or you have a mentor that has gone through anxiety, that has gone through all of this, because she knows what it feels like, right? So I couldn't meditate before. I had to navigate myself through that at first. Like I started just like kind of listening to guided meditations. That's the way I started doing it, but it would be like only 5 minutes. I couldn't handle more. But one of the things that changed my mind when I started doing that work was this mindfulness meditation that helped me tap into my body, reconnect with my body. That's the one that helped me the most. And then it was guided meditations. And slowly I transitioned to just binaural beats, just music. I cannot meditate without music. And I have to have earplugs, or I have to have, if I'm doing it with nothing, it has to be no noise. Like I cannot meditate with noise around me. Like I just can't. I don't know. That's just something that I don't like it. I don't like it. So I do what works for me. So like I was saying, with anxiety, you have to do, when you start doing this work, you're going to reconnect with your feminine energy. You're going to reconnect with your body, with your womb. And a lot of times, just that reconnection is going to help you feel so much better with your anxiety. For me, it was a game changer too. The breath work, the EFT, the womb healing, the reconnecting with my body, the somatic work, but the feminine energy work was huge for me. And although I still have some moments where I have a lot of anxiety, especially if I don't know what's going to happen, I catch myself right away. I just don't let it linger for longer than it needs to, right? Especially if it's an emotion, then an emotion, you're only meant to feel the emotion for 90 seconds. After that, it's our thoughts that keep circling back to that emotion, and then more emotions come, more thoughts, and it's just a cycle that is so hard to get out of. So that's why interrupting that pattern is so needed. But a lot of times the tools are the ones that are going to make a difference. So if you're not aware of the tools, you have to find someone or some guidance around that, because we can go years in anxiety taking medication without knowing that there is an answer. And maybe the answer for you is to take medication, but also integrate holistic tools or integrate other tools to help you, right? And little by little, when you talk to your psychiatrist or when you talk to your medical doctor or whomever prescribed the medication, for example, for me, I just said, I don't want to go in this medication anymore. I don't want to be in it anymore. So little by little, I started decreasing the dosage. And I was only taking like 10 milligrams. So it wasn't that much. But I didn't want to be attached to a medicine. And it helped me for the time it needed to, and if at any point I go through a time that I feel like, oh, you know what, I need help, I will seek the help, because it's okay to get help, right? And sometimes if it's Western medicine, then sometimes that's what we need, right? But you have to feel okay with that decision. You have to be okay with that. So I told my doctor, so we decreased the medication, and I was doing more inner work. I was doing more womb healing. I reconnected more with nature. I started doing more things. So now that when anxiety comes, I right away know, I'm like, oh, what's going on? Why am I anxious? Where is this coming from? And sometimes I can dive deep into that. Sometimes it's just like very surface level. Okay, what am I thinking that is producing this anxiety to keep circling back more and more, or to keep compounding? That's the word I'm looking for, to keep compounding, and for my body to be like all activated, like what's going on? Why is my nervous system activated right now? And then I just dive deep into that, and then I just start exploring. Sometimes an quick EFT session does it. Sometimes it's breath work. Sometimes it's taking a walk. Sometimes it's, I work out in the morning, so I don't really work out during the day in case one day I feel stressed and I can just go for a run. No. So I do what works for me, right? And sometimes it's just more like journaling. Sometimes it depends. Sometimes it's intuitive. Sometimes it's on the spot. Sometimes it's whatever I feel pulled to do or called to do at the moment to help me. That's where I'm going to seek. But with the anxiety, obviously, when I was doing this work, I also did the work for my childhood. I also did the work to heal those trigger moments that I had, like when I was like 6, 7, 8. I don't remember exactly that age, when I used to wake up out of nowhere, panic. I revisited that moment in my childhood and talked to that little girl and soothe her. And I think this is where chamomile can have a huge impact, to the energy of chamomile, that is soothing, that it helps with anxiety, that it helps give you that peace of mind, that it's like a hug from a mom. And that's the way I feel chamomile is. So it just depends, right? But sometimes you have to go back into your childhood and heal that specific situation by mothering or fathering yourself. So like reparenting work. So I've done that. So that situation, although I think about it, it doesn't produce in my body that anxiety, that panic anymore, because I know my parents are alive right now. And if something were to happen, I hope it doesn't anytime soon, I know I'm going to be okay. And it's going to hurt like hell, I know. But I also know that I have so many tools and I have so many venues to help me move through that stuff if it ever comes, right? So I did a lot of that. The high school situation, I revisited that. It's just a lot of doing the inner work. It's also a lot of like getting to know the previous versions of yourself and being thankful for them. And like, wow, thank you for helping me move through that situation. Thank you for helping me navigate high school. Thank you for helping me. You were so strong. You were so courageous because you graduated. And it's so sad, but a lot of Latinas in my school, a lot of them didn't or graduated from high school and that was it. And I went on to university and I was fine. I made it through. But yet I carried all this trauma and anxiety in my body until I hit my rock bottom. I had my spiritual awakening and I realized that stuff was in my body, in my womb, and I needed to release it and I needed to let it go and I needed to move through it and I needed to just really reconnect with who I am at my core. That's when my life changed. That's when my life shifted. And so anxiety, it's probably going to be with me. I don't let it define me. I never say I'm an anxious person. I just say I'm going through anxiety right now. I feel anxious, but I never said I have anxiety or I don't identify as an anxious person anymore. I used to when I first started learning that I had anxiety, and it was not stress. What I thought it was stress, it was actually anxiety and panic attacks. So now it's like anytime a situation comes through that where I feel a lot of anxiety, I just sit with it. I feel it. I understand it. I empathize with it. I try to be as loving and compassionate and nurturing and kind to myself. I try to really find the message in the anxiety because it's a messenger. If my nervous system is being activated, aroused, and triggered, that means that there is something going on there that I have to pay attention to. And a lot of times is this disconnection we have with our bodies that keeps giving us that anxiety or that whatever we're going through. It's kind of like knocking on the door, like, hey, reconnect with me, see me, I'm here, I want to tell you something. A lot of times I feel like anxiety is that, or even depression. It's like a knock on the door from our bodies to our heads, kind of like, hey, get out of your head, come into the body and feel me, acknowledge me, see me, witness me. A lot of times I feel like anxiety is just that. It's there pestering you in a way until you turn inward and you pay attention to it, you feel it, and you realize what's going on, And sometimes, like I said, it depends whatever you want for yourself, what resonates with you, how you want to live your life. Sometimes it's a marriage between Western medicine and an Eastern approach, holistic approach, integrative approach. Sometimes it's both the medicine and the meditation, the medicine and the EFT, right? A lot of times it's just like for peace. Some people it's like, you know what? I just want to do it holistically, and you do it holistically and you really do this work. Because when I stopped taking the medication, the anxiety did come, the depression did come, but I'm like, okay, this is a cry for help from my body, from my soul, from my womb, like what's going on. And that's when I dove deeper and I just had to move myself through it. And I knew I could do it. I'm like, you're going to be able to do it. You're going to be able to do it. And I did. And some days they comes, and when those days come, I'm just more loving, nurturing to myself. I'm just more kind. I talk to myself the way I wish my mom talked to me. I hug myself the way I wish my mom did. I reparent myself. And a lot of times anxiety, it's our inner child. For me, it was my inner child. So I really hope this helps. It's a little bit of my story with anxiety, which is, I'm still like, some days I'm just like, how did I not know I had anxiety all these years and panic attacks? I thought it was just stress, like anyone's stressful, But no, mine was like, and of course, stress is a part of stress is anxiety. Your nervous system is activated, right? But I just never thought about anxiety, and it just blows my mind that I just didn't have that it didn't click in my head, right? And I'm so logical. I was so in my masculine energy. I was so rational that I intellectualize everything. So when I started doing this work, like that changed because I dropped into my body, into my womb, and things just completely shifted for me. So I really hope this resonates with you. Let me know your thoughts. And if you struggle with anxiety, I'm sending you so much love. I know what it's like. I just had an episode today and I just did some EFT. I kind of like, when I do my EFT is so different, and I was able to find the root of the thought that was producing the more anxiety in my body. And I shifted from that. And then I was sitting down doing this work, was starting to do my work for the day. And right away, the downloads came. Like my intuition is like, no, you have to go and do a podcast. So I was like, okay, here I am. My feminine energy, just free flowing, going with the flow, just talking from my experience and my story. And I know this is probably going to help someone. Someone's going to resonate with it. If it trigger you, I'm sending you so much love too. I hope you are able to take this as a medicine, as a message, and dive deep into what's going on for you, how this lands in your body, how this feels in your body. So yes, I appreciate any feedback. Reach out to me at Feminine Truth Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Reach out to me if you have any questions, if you resonated with this, and if you want more episodes that are free-flowing or intuitively led like this. Let me know in the reviews. Let me know. And if this resonates with you, share it in your Instagram story. Share it with anyone that can be going through this. And for me, the way through anxiety was diving deep into my body, reconnecting with my womb, with my feminine energy, with my menstrual cycle, with my truth, who I really am, and realizing all the stuff that I was carrying in my body, the trauma, the unprocessed pain, unprocessed emotions, the feminine collective suppression of being a woman in this world, thanks to the oppression of the patriarchy, and what we carry from our lineages, especially our feminine lineage as women, what our moms, our grandmas went through that we are carrying within us. We also have to do the work for that. So anxiety, although it is very real, it can also be a messenger. It can also be your own medicine. That's going to help you with some situation. I'm not sure what you're going through, but I love you. I'm sending you so much love, and I'll see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation for Feminine Truth Podcast. This podcast is for you, for me, for us, for the feminine collective. Thank you so much for spending your time and energy with us. Share on Instagram and Facebook stories what resonated with you. And if you're listening to this, and for anyone to get a hold of this podcast at Feminine Truth Podcast, and if you feel called to, leave us a review. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know how this has felt for you listening to the podcast. And the episodes are going to be every Tuesday, so I cannot wait to see you next time. Sending so much love.